Matthew 7, I'm going to start reading in verse 13. It says, "Enter ye in at the strait gate. For wide is the gate, and broad is the way that leadeth to destruction, and many there be which go in thereat. Because strait is the gate, and narrow is the way which leadeth unto life, and few there be that find it." Let's go ahead and you can go ahead and be seated. Tonight I'm going on with the series on Go, and we saw that in the verse, but the title of tonight's message is Choices. When you look at life, all throughout it, you're given choices over and over and over. I thought about it as I was praying this. As a kid, you're given the choice whether or not you're going to obey your parents. I do my very best to teach my kids right and wrong and to teach them. I try to teach them by what I say, but also by what they see me doing, what they ought to do. As parents, we do that. We try to teach our kids. But as much as we may try to teach them, and as much as we may try to kind of mold that, they ultimately have to choose whether or not they're going to obey me. They come to some decision in their life, and they have to decide, do I do what my dad taught me, or do I do what I want to do? As a kid, they have to decide whether or not to obey their parents. And even in that decision, they have to make another decision, and that is the punishment worth the crime? Because they know if they don't obey, they're going to get punished, and a kid has to decide, well, is what I want to do worth the punishment that's coming? I won't give details, but I can remember times in my childhood where I wanted to do something and I knew I shouldn't, and I knew I would get in trouble for it, but decided it was worth it. It's a decision that kids are faced with. They're faced with the decision whether or not they're going to study hard. They go to school and let's be honest, whether or not they will work hard and try to learn it is a decision they have to make. As a parent, I can make my kids study. I can force them to sit down with a book in front of them, and I can make them read it out loud over and over and over, but I can't force them to learn. I can't force them to learn. Instead, I need to teach them the importance of working hard in school so that they make the choice that it's worth the work. Because if a kid doesn't have the right attitude, then they can read it over as many times as you want, and they won't learn anything. The kid has to make a choice. As a kid, they have to make the choice of who their influences will be. Again, as a parent, we try to direct that. I try to make sure that their time is with the right kind of influences. Their time with the people that I think would be the wrong influences is limited, and I try to push them and direct them toward people that I think will help them grow spiritually, and what to look for in a friend. But ultimately, they decide who influences them. They decide who they're going to get influenced by. They decide who's going to have the most effect on them. They are choices they have to make. And as I thinking about this, the choices that are made over and over and over, and as an adult, it's no different. There are choices that have to be made, and some really big ones. Things like, who are you going to marry? It's a choice that has major implications on the rest of your life. And I'm not just saying this because my wife is in here. I would have said I thought she was going to be in nursery and actually when I wrote this. So, but I think I'm okay. I'm going to get brownie points tonight. It's good. Normally when I think she's in nursery and I write something, it's because I'm going to get in trouble. Tonight she's in here and it's a good thing. I am incredibly blessed with my wife. I believe that we have a great relationship and that she is the one that God made for me. And that's not the case with everyone. I've worked with guys who would not say that. In fact, guys who have told me the exact opposite. I think of one guy in particular who, no joke, he told me it was a mistake that he married his wife. And because of it, he told me on a regular basis he dreaded going home each night. He and I argued almost every day that we worked together because I wanted to get off at a normal time so that I could be home with my wife and kids. And every single day he wanted to work late so that he didn't have to go home to his wife and kids. They had a terrible relationship, and he knew when he got home it would be a fight, so he preferred work late and not be there. Who you marry is a choice that has to be made. Things like a career is a choice that has to be made. I guess it doesn't have to be. A person could flounder from job to job, but that's a choice. Where to live, that's a choice that has to be made. Do I stay where I grew up or do I move away? Choices like, should we have kids? How many? Where should they go to school? On and on and on. There are choices all through our life. Big things, like I mentioned, all the way down to small things. So far I've only named big. I'll give you a little one, but a little one that has a whole lot of choices in it. The grocery store. I am a typical man. I hate when my wife sends me to a grocery store. I hate it. I have enough things on my mind and on my plate that the last thing I need is extra choices that I need to make. And no matter what choices I make when I go to the store, it never seems to be what she would have chosen, because men and women don't think the same at all. I can go, and I can even go to the store and try to think, what would she get? But apparently I have no idea what she would get, because I never come home with that. There are just too many good things in the store, and they all seem to jump in my cart. Have you ever thought about how many choices there are in one trip to the grocery store? I mean, a simple thing like that. I'll give a totally hypothetical story here. This has never happened in my house. Hypothetically, if we were to put the kids to bed and decide we want some ice cream. Never happens in my house. But we put the kids to bed and decide we want some ice cream. So she asks if I'll run to the store to get some. All the decisions that have to be made in a simple thing like, let's run to the store and get some ice cream. I won't even touch on the decisions that have to be made before you leave your house, but start once you get in the car. What store? From my house, Fred Meyer and Safeway are exactly the same distance. Approximately the same price, because I'm a guy. I have no idea who's on sale or anything like that. So, what store? Then once you get to the store, what entrance? Which door is closest to the ice cream? Because if I'm going to eat ice cream at 10 o'clock at night, I want the shortest walk possible. I mean, let's be honest here. Then you get to what aisle? Again, another question, another choice. My wife can go into pretty much any store and know exactly where to get what she wants. Not me. I literally wander every aisle and throw a bunch of extra stuff in my cart until I finally find what I'm searching for. I have to remember what aisle it is. And then, the biggest question to me, which ice cream? Because there are like 8 different brands, all with 15 different flavors. And when you love ice cream like I do, and some of you can probably relate, that's a legitimate problem, deciding which one do I want to eat. And mixed in with that decision is, which one would Lisa like to eat? And inevitably, it will not be the same as what I do, because I will always pick caramel and she always wants some sort of double chocolate mint thing. 30 minutes later, after I decide on ice cream, then you have more choices. What line? Now you have to pick a line, which is a big decision. I have melting ice cream in hand. This is time sensitive now. And I'm sure I could think more about this and come up with a bunch, but you get the idea. Simple little thing like running to the store. One little thing. Tons of different choices that you make without even really realizing you're making them most of the time. Over and over in life, probably if you really thought it out, hundreds of thousands of times a day, you and I make a choice. It's something that we cannot escape. It's something that happens all the time. And in this passage, we see the same thing. We see a choice that has to be made. Every single person that lives or that has lived or that ever will live will make this same choice. And that choice is, which way will I go? The Bible gives it real clear. There's 2 different paths. Which one am I going to take? Will I go the way of the world, or will I go the way of God? So here's what I want to do for this tonight. I want us to take both ways and look at them individually, and then kind of leave off with that same question: which way will you go? First, we'll look at the way of the world. The Bible here gives us 3 descriptions of that way. Let's read verse 13 again. It says, "Enter ye in at the strait gate, for wide is the gate, and broad is the way that leadeth to destruction, and many there be which go in thereat." The Bible gives 3 descriptions of this way. The first is it's wide and broad. Let me put it this way. It's the easy way. It's the easy way. Given the choice, almost everyone will pick what's easiest for them. They're going to pick what's simple. If you give someone the option between two jobs and they both have the same pay, the same hours, the same benefits, and everything is virtually the same, people will always take the one that they think is going to be easiest for them. Myself, most people will think I'm crazy with this, but my favorite part of plumbing is groundworks. There's no question about it. I will pick a groundwork over any other stage of plumbing any day. It means digging. It has some negatives like that, but I'll pick it. The reason is, it's the one that comes most natural to me. It just seems to make sense to me, so I would choose it because it's easiest for me. And that's very often what we do. That's what this way of the world is. It's the easy way. It's the way that we look at and we can see I can get the most gain with the least work. I can skate my way through it. And then he describes it as many there be that go in. In other words, it's the popular way. It's the popular way. It's the one that most people are doing. You think about it, everyone wants to be popular, or they at least want to be with the popular people. If they don't want to be popular themselves, they at least want to be with the popular people. And I know you thought that ended when you graduated high school, but it didn't. I like to watch people. And here's what I've figured out. The vast majority of people are just a copycat of someone else. They pick someone that they perceive as well-liked, and they model themselves after that person. And it isn't long before they begin to dress like them and talk like them and even begin to act like them because they want to be with the popular crowd. That's why so many celebrities carry, their own clothing brands, and why those brands typically have hideous-looking clothes, but people buy them like crazy and they can succeed. They're no different than the clothes you can buy at any other store, but if I wear their clothes, I'll be like them. When I was a kid, Air Jordans were super cool. Everyone wanted a pair of Air Jordans. I had a friend who had a pair of Air Jordans, and I was always jealous. It's not like it actually helped him do anything better, but they were running the slogan, like Mike. That if you buy these shoes, you can play basketball like Michael Jordan. And as a kid, we were all convinced it worked. I was sure he played better basketball than me because, he was wearing Air Jordans. Of course he's going to play better basketball. The slogan worked simply because people wanted to run with the crowd. Michael Jordan was popular. People wanted to run with him. The way of the world is exactly that. It's the popular way. And a whole lot of people go that way simply because a whole lot of people are going that way. That makes sense? There are a lot of people who go the way of the world for no other reason than there are a lot of people that are going the way of the world. They don't actually know anything about it. They don't know where it leads. They don't know anything about it. They just know there's a crowd going. So they follow. This passage says one more thing about this way, and it's a pretty important thing, and that is it's a way of destruction. Easy way and popular way, those both sound pretty good. And those both sound kind of nice to us. Way of destruction, that has a different sound entirely. I'm going to guess that there's no one in here tonight, who says, I want my life to be destroyed. But I want to point this out here. Most of the time when we hear this passage, we hear it in regards to salvation, which is correct. When it comes to salvation, there is the choice: do we go the world's way, which is easier and popular, leads to eternal destruction, or do we go God's way? Being that it's Wednesday night, I'm not going to focus in that direction of it. I want to propose to you that tonight that the saved person can make the choice to live in the world's way. They're saved, they've accepted Christ, but in their day-to-day life, they're choosing to go in the way of the world rather than the way of God. It may not cause eternal destruction, but it destroys their lives. And I know this is true because of verses like 1 Corinthians 3:11 through 14. For other foundation can no man lay than is laid, which is Jesus Christ. Now if any man build upon the foundation gold, silver, precious stones, wood, hay, stubble, every man's work shall be made manifest, for the day shall declare it, because it shall be revealed by fire. And the fire shall try every man's work of what sort it is. If any man's work abide, which he hath built thereon, he shall receive his reward. Now think about this. The passage is talking about, the passage is talking about those who their works are wood, hay, stubble. These are saved people, but their works are worthless in heaven. What that is they are saved people who lived for the world. They live for what they could have here. They're saved, yet so as by fire. They have nothing to show for it because they're saved and they chose to live in this world's way. I'll give you two examples, a personal example and then a biblical example. A personal example is I worked with a guy about 7-8 years ago who had grown up in actually this church. He had a solid testimony of salvation. He had gone here from the time that he was a young kid until he graduated high school. When he graduated high school, he decided that his church had been wrong and he was going to do his own thing. By the time I had met him, he had been out of church for probably 10 plus years and self-admittedly had made a huge mess of his life. And he told me, and I found this interesting, he told me that his life was miserable, but that he felt he had gone too far to come back. No matter what I said to him, I couldn't convince him otherwise. He was a man who he knew without a shadow of a doubt that he was saved. But he had chosen to live the world's way, and because of it, had destroyed his life and his family's life. So he had a wife and kids who had never stepped foot in a church. He destroyed his life and theirs. Biblical example, Lot. We all know the story. I'm not going to take the time to give all the details. Given the choice, he chose the way of the world, and it destroyed his life. And because of his decision, he lost his wife physically and his children spiritually. And it's no different for you and I. If we choose the way of the world, the destination is always destruction. The passage that we started with, it gives us two ways we can go. The first is the way of the world. The second is God's way. Again, he gives us descriptions of this way. The first is it's straight and narrow. I'm just going to word this way. It's not easy. Straight means difficult. It's not going to be simple. Most of you know Brother Jance and David and myself hiked a section of the Pacific Crest Trail back in August, I think it was. It amazed me. In those 3 days of hiking, there are all sorts of different terrains. To me, it was really neat to see, how much in just a matter of a few miles the terrain can change. Our first day was really, comparatively, was really easy. There were some hills, but the entire first day we're walking through forest. It was all shaded. The trails through that section was nice and wide. You could have walked two people side by side for sure, and there were some sections we all three could walk side by side. It was a nice, wide, relatively smooth path. Not a lot of big rocks or tree roots. The second day, that was not the case. About, a half hour into our second day, the trail went from 3 feet wide to 1 foot wide and was climbing steadily uphill all day long. You're no longer in the shade of trees and you're exposed to the sun the entire day. Very steep, narrow way. And to go with that, now you had big rocks that you were stepping over. There was definitely a different degree of difficulty. That compares to this, though, because going God's way isn't always easy. I'm going to just be very honest here that there are times that doing things God's way is hard because He doesn't do things the way I think they ought to be done. And sometimes that brings me through things that if I were planning, I think I would have gone around that. I wouldn't have gone through this if I were the one in charge of this. But God's way is straight and narrow. God's way is secondly, describes that as it's unpopulated. The verse puts it that few there be that find it. Now, excuse me. Take this right. I'm not saying we need to be judging others or anything like that. But if you start paying attention to those around you who are living for God and who are not, it's pretty easy to tell. And you see really quickly that living for God puts you in a minority. People don't like to go the hard way. Again, coming back to the hike, day 1 and day 3 were probably the easiest. Day 1, we saw a whole lot of people. Day 3, we saw a whole lot of people. Day 2, we saw a handful of people. It was substantially less. People don't like to go the hard way. So few are in it. Verse gives one more description of God's way, and that is this, that it leads to life. That it leads to life. Again, look at our verse 14. Because straight is the gate, and narrow is the way which leadeth unto life. Now again, we could very easily focus on eternal life, that Jesus is the way to eternal life, but I want us to look at this from, again, the view of the Christian. Living your life for God leads to life, and not just life, but life more abundantly. John 10:10 says, the thief cometh in the night. Let me start that again. John 10:10. The thief cometh not, but for to steal and to kill and to destroy. I am come that they might have life, and that they might have it more abundantly. Living for God, going God's way, leads to a life full of joy. Pastor's been preaching on the pursuit of happiness all the Sunday mornings of this year. A familiar theme that I have found, at least myself, maybe this is just God bringing this to me, but that I've seen in the messages throughout all of them is that as a Christian, if you want to find happiness, live for God. If you walk in God's way, it leads to joy. Leads to a life full of purpose, not wandering aimlessly searching for why you're here. God gives us a purpose. He gives us a job, and it's a purpose that's bigger than just you. Bigger than just what you can get right now, but a life that has eternal purpose. God gives us, living for God gives us a life, simply put, worth living. So I want to, as I wrap this up, I want to wrap this up very, very simply. We have a choice to make. But here's the thing. It's not a one-day choice. We would like it if it were that way. It would be really easy if we just one time say, I want to go the straight and narrow way. I want to go the straight and narrow way. Right now in the Bible class at school, we're memorizing John 24:14 through 18, where you have Joshua saying, as for me and my house, we will serve the Lord. And we would really like the idea if we could once in our life say, as for me and my house, we will serve the Lord. And then it just happens. But it doesn't. Paul says, I die daily. This isn't just a choice that is I'm going to go God's way, and then, you set it in cruise control and you automatically go God's way. This is a daily choice. This is something that you'll have to wake up every morning and decide, today, I'm walking in God's way. Which path are you going to take? Which way will you go? The world's way or God's? And so I'll just end very simply like this. Every day, what's your choice going to be? Let's pray.